Hello and welcome to Untitled Podcast with Art, an art podcast about pop culture and a pop culture podcast about art. My name is Chris.
And my name is Simon. And just a note to everyone listening, whether it's your first time or you've been with us since the beginning, which was like 2 months ago.
First time, long time.
You might have noticed that we talk a lot about visual stuff on this show, but it's in an audio format. Guess what? It's not entirely in an audio format. If you want to watch along to the things we're talking about, you can check out our YouTube or Spotify, where you can see a video version of the show, where we have slides that Chris made that show all of the art that we're talking about. All of our episodes have this.
It's true.
It is true. Yeah.
It is true. He's not lying. I don't know why he would lie.
So today we are back talking about the rest of the film Problemista.
The 2024 A24 film, produced, directed, and starring Julio Torres, also starring Tilda Swinton.
And if you want to know what it's about up to this point,
you're going to have to listen. Okay.
Please listen to part 1. It's our previous episode. It's episode 5.
You have to listen to part 1. It's non-negotiable.
I mean, you don't have to. You could have seen the movie and want to jump straight into part 2.
For some reason, not knowing where part 1 of this podcast left off, you might want to jump into part 2.
I think that's
just blindly, blind faith in us, some people.
And that's our cue to jump into part 2. Let's get to it. To catch everyone up, Alejandro and Elizabeth have embarked on their joint quest to realize Bobby's 13 Eggs painting show.
So together they go visit a gallery to retrieve a few of Bobby's paintings for this show they are curating. And working the front desk is Celeste, Elizabeth's former assistant, whom she accuses of stealing an Epson cartridge and flying to Italy to pay for her MFA tuition in ink.
Printers, in my experience, are a volatile topic because I've been asked more than once, what printer should I get for my art? You like technology. What kind of printer should you get? And there is no right answer.
You don't get a printer. It's a trap.
It's going to break. Things expensive. You're not going to use it more than twice. Don't do it.
No, I feel like one of Alejandro's toys could be like a regular ass printer to show you that things will never get better, because as long as I've lived, printers have been awful and continue to be awful.
I just think we lack the political and cultural will to make printers better.
Yeah.
I mean, if capitalism really did work,
printers would be fine and ink would not be the most expensive substance per ounce on earth.
All of your documents would be written out by the invisible hand.
If life was fair, then the databases would be synced and there would be order. So this gallery that they're in is actually called Calderon Ruiz, and it is a real gallery in Lower Manhattan. And the show that is up while they're there is an actual show titled Siempre en la Calle. I should have let you do this because you spent a semester in Chile, and I have only done 2 years of really cursory Duolingo study. So this 2-person exhibition from 2021 called Siempre en la Calle. Why?
What? Are you okay?
Why can't I do it? Gotta go in there and replace that with 2 Y's, so I stopped doing this.
How's the Duolingo treating you?
I have a 600-day streak. I'm drinking a Modelo Negra. It should be fine. This 2-person exhibition. Oh no, I just can't do it anymore.
I'm not cutting this.
No, you have
I'm not cutting this.
Okay,
no.
but can you? You do. Okay.
Okay. Do you want me to do this?
No,
part?
I can do it.
Okay.
I can do it. Leave me alone. This 2-person exhibition from 2021 with Danielle De Jesus and Shellyne Rodriguez titled Siempre en la Calle. I looked into reviews and stuff of the show, and I thought it was fitting that this is a show about Bushwick, which is where Alejandro is living in the movie. It's a show about Bushwick and gentrification. One write-up that it got in Hyperallergic, one quote was,
"It powerfully responds to the continued attacks on their neighborhoods with works that validate and uplift elements of everyday urban Latinx life that are usually devalued."
In the background behind Alejandro, he's kind of going through the gallery and you can see different works. So, Simon, what do you see here in this first image?
It's an arm attached to a person who appears to be wearing a Hugo Boss shirt.
Yes, with a Native American wearing a full regalia headdress. I thought that was a really fitting show that they chose to shoot this amongst, especially because Ollie is an immigrant living in Bushwick, and the two artists in this two-artist show are Puerto Rican, and they are both, I think, second generation, and Ollie is obviously first gen. And I think it's interesting to see the contrast in these two works of art, where you have somebody who I think reads very much as an outsider, but is coming into the gallery with this kind of insider connection. And then you have these two artists who are doing these representations of street life in their work. They're showing kind of everyday people in that neighborhood in Bushwick.
So again, as Alejandro is going through this show, Celeste and Elizabeth are just going at each other in the background. Celeste says something to the tune of, maybe a Marriott breakfast buffet will show some interest this time, to end the conversation with Elizabeth. The exchange upsets Elizabeth, who explains to Alejandro that people don't understand her, what it means to want something as badly as she does.
Yeah, Celeste also tells her that, if she decides to review the show that she's curating, that she should use a pseudonym this time. And that's when we flash back to Bobby telling Elizabeth that she humiliated him by writing a review without using a pseudonym, and that they hate his eggs. And it's a really tender scene because we see Elizabeth really sad. But it's also a scene that's interspersed with some of Bobby's work. And so this scene, you see one of his egg paintings with a rose on an easel, and you see an egg sitting on a little pedestal, and there's fabric draped around, and there are canvases scattered in the background. And I actually think it's a really lovely composition. And this sort of photography still life actually captures something in Bobby's paintings that he can't. And I was just well, if Bobby wakes up in the future, he should definitely pursue this line of inquiry. It actually is great. There's something very captivating about this arrangement of his work.
Well, it's also, a testament to the cinematography here. We talked earlier about how all these little shots that would seemingly be kind of pickup shots or just shots to cover an edit or something, or, just to add some texture to the scene, a lot of them could really be stills of an installation or something, and this one's no exception.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. So this exchange with Celeste sends Elizabeth reeling, and she explains to Alejandro that people don't understand her. They don't understand what it means to want something as badly as she does. And it's a nice little moment of connection between her and Ollie. And I also just want to mention that during this scene, the flashlight on Elizabeth's phone is on again.
It's never been off, right?
No, it is off, I think. Maybe it's always on when she's got her phone in her hand.
But how is it ever charged? Is she also carrying that extra high heel with the cable wrapped around it?
Yes. She's plugging that in at every restaurant gallery. But no, we know that isn't true, because in that scene at the cafe, the cafe for squirrels, Walnuts Cafe.
Yeah. Goat's cheese cafe.
She hands her charger to the waiter and says, "Charge this." And I wonder, the heel is not attached.
Oh, good. Okay. She was wearing the heel.
Yes.
Yeah, that's why she had to charge that day.
It down the street as she walks. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, with the flashlight always being on, I have to wonder how many scenes got left on the cutting room floor of Elizabeth's phone dying, because I feel like that could be a major part of this character.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, she's always having trouble with her electronics, and, things are always dying. And yeah, it feels like that's just a part of her character.
So we're at this moment where Elizabeth is talking to Alejandro about how people don't know what it's like to want things as badly as she does. I mean, it's a touching moment, like you said, but it's also Alejandro's life outside of her is totally invisible to her, too.
Yeah, she doesn't know anything about him. As far as we know, this is their third day of knowing each other.
Except for El Salvador, pupusas.
And those nuns they killed in the 80s. Yeah, no, she doesn't know anything about him yet, I will say. I don't think that it necessarily remains that way in spite of, she is definitely the archetype of a nightmare boss. And, I think the movie does a good job of humanizing her, though, later on.
Yeah.
While she's saying this to him, they flash back again to her and Bobby meeting for the first time at an opening at his commune. And what do you think of the word commune?
Usually it's kind of muddy.
Yeah.
Which isn't really the case in New York City, I guess. Are you looking for something here?
No, I feel like it's just a weird word. I don't know. I think when I think commune, I think we're working the land and splitting it all evenly, and
there's geese involved.
Yeah, farm work is being done. I feel like I always think of commune like an artist co-op or something. I've been a part of artist-run cooperatives, but calling it a commune is very funny to me.
I mean, maybe it is a commune, and part of why Bobby doesn't fit in, which is what this flashback is about, is because he keeps painting all their eggs.
He's taking them from the geese.
Yeah, those are food.
Give me that. He's like, no, I got to paint this one too. Well, in this particular flashback, the commune is putting on a show, and he's bummed out because none of his work was chosen. Again, because he steals everybody's eggs. In the background, we kind of get a glimpse of the show and some pieces in the background. And I looked into it, and one of the pieces is by Doug Henders, who apparently does a ton of work for film and TV. And apparently the image you see kind of straight down from the balcony, it's like a large abstracted pink sort of line abstraction, was also in an episode of Succession, season 3, episode 3, but it was displayed horizontally.
Wait, which is the right way?
I don't know. Yeah, I have no idea which way is correct. Also, weirdly looks way smaller in that episode of Succession, but I think it's because the image I found of it makes it look smaller than it actually is. I think it's actually much further away in this scene.
I mean, it might be that in this image from Succession, you're in Kendall's apartment.
Yeah.
And it looks like it might be like a print or something.
I think it's the real deal, but I think that his apartment is way, way bigger than this. You can kind of see the area behind the lamp and stuff. I think this apartment goes on way longer than you think, but it makes it look like the painting is right above this character's head.
Well, the apartment's long, but it's not tall enough, because otherwise the painting would be vertical, not horizontal.
That's true. So, yeah, he has another painting behind Elizabeth when her and Bobby first meet, where she's yelling at people and smoking indoors, and Bobby approaches her and says, "You can't smoke here." And then their eyes meet, and he invites her up for a studio visit.
Also, it's not just that she's smoking inside in a place where you can't smoke. I mean, I don't know when the last time you were allowed to smoke inside in New York City was. Probably not recently. But also, it's kind of a dick move to smoke around a bunch of art.
Yeah, it is not polite, and nobody would accuse her of being polite. But also, is holding a cactus while walking around an art show rude as well? I can't decide.
That's her emotional support cactus. You're not allowed to ask that.
Does that cactus have a permit?
With the still here, there's another painting by Doug Henders, right? Heat Seekers.
Yeah, the one she's standing in front of while smoking, yeah.
Did Doug Henders also make her outfit? Because she looks like she's a part of this painting, from her dyed hair to her dress or jacket or whatever that is. She blends right in.
I believe under that jacket, she's wearing this incredible vintage Jean-Paul Gaultier turtleneck sweater, and it is so good. And I mean, I'm obsessed with her wardrobe throughout this entire movie. Whoever did the wardrobe just nailed this older art lady aesthetic without making it into a meme, and that's what I really appreciate about the wardrobe here. Yeah, I've got about 20 more years till I'm dressing exactly like her.
I mean, you can start small. Just start carrying a cactus everywhere you go.
Yeah. Step 1, flashlight on, cactus.
Get on the bus, put the cactus down next to you. No, sorry, you can't sit here. My cactus is here.
Cactus. Yeah. And then
what are they going to do? Sit on a cactus?
Right. No. Yeah. And then if they try, I'll just splash water on the seat, because nobody wants to sit on a wet seat on the subway.
That's already the case on CTA usually.
Always guaranteed to have an empty seat next to you if you just squirt a little water on it. Never do that. That is so rude. My God.
It's you're why.
It's the kind of thing where as I was saying it, I was like, oh my God, I bet people actually do that, don't they? It never even occurred to me that somebody would actually do that. And now that I'm saying it out loud, I'm realizing it probably happens every day. And that's horrifying to me.
I mean, it might be more like not deliberately squirting water on it, but maybe you just have a cup and, you could be careful with it, but if not, and some water falls, it's got the added benefit of keeping that seat open for you.
Yeah, when I walk around with an open cup.
Yep.
Yeah, throughout my day.
Big styrofoam cup.
Yeah, just a big gulp. Yeah, I don't know. Well, okay. Him and Elizabeth wind up connecting over his eggs. And then we flash forward a little more, and they've been together for some time. Bobby's been diagnosed with cancer. It's terminal, and he's looking into euthanasia with Freeze Corp. I think this is, I don't know, it's nice to see Elizabeth's character as optimistic and strong. She's telling him she's going to inject him, freeze his insides, and then pay the costly fees for the body preservation. And it's one of the times we don't see her as a complete mess, even though something really, truly terrible is happening to her.
Well, Bobby's got his way to describe this to Elizabeth was pretty funny. I mean, it's very emblematic of the very direct comedic writing throughout this movie. But he says to her, I know it's unfair to you, and it's really, really expensive, but we can cover the expenses if we sell some paintings. I'm going to need to paint some bigger eggs. Which I like that a lot. I know it's a joke, but first of all, eggs only get so big. You have like ostrich and then nothing else. And that is all I remember from kindergarten.
I mean, you could go dinosaur, I guess. I mean, I bet some museums still have pretty intact dinosaur eggs, right?
Yeah, probably.
Jurassic Park.
You could paint them.
You could paint those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then there's also like the little bit at the end about the size of the paintings and the eggs goes to this bigger conversation about scale and art. And
yes,
we talked in our previous episodes about like, the hours that go into it, which that's not really a thing the quote unquote serious art world considers. But scale is a question, right? You can sell a large painting for a lot more.
Yeah.
It also takes a lot more materials. But I mean, I've heard professional artists say like, I need to make some bigger things because I have too many small things that collectively won't sell enough.
Yeah. And there are different ways to price art, but one popular way is to price per square inch of painting.
Like real estate.
Yeah, exactly.
Wait, can you buy real estate by the square inch?
Real estate for snails. For the snail city. But yeah.
And they're eggs dressed up in human clothes that are their neighbors. I
love this world we're creating.
Yeah.
Everybody's got their emotional support cactus. Eggs dressed up in little clothes, walking around, their flashlights on.
So after this flashback, we cut back to the loft, and Ale and Elizabeth are trying to work out the curation of the show that they're going to do with Bobby's work. Elizabeth is starting to spiral, and Alejandro suggests that one of Bobby's final works should be included. Elizabeth protests, saying that the painting is just unresolved negative space, but Ale gives a thoughtful critique of it, and Elizabeth is moved by his words and agrees, directing him to add it to FileMaker Pro. I know that you like this piece, right? It to me, it's another egg, but I guess it's kind of like a pre-egg, right? It's an oval on a canvas. There's not any shading done or anything.
Yeah, it's an egg of an egg. You can kind of start seeing some things being worked out in terms of shading and like giving the image volume and things like that. But yeah, I think it's very lovely. And I think Alejandro's critique of the piece is very sweet. And I think it just continues to show how he truly understands art and artists. And this was another one of those like kind of cinematic still lives where you've got this sort of unresolved piece situated among all these other paintings of eggs, and there's a bunch of plastic wrap. And I think it's another moment where Bobby's work actually starts to shine. And like, again, I know when you wake up, you're kind of like not into the eggs anymore, but this could be it for you. Also, little background Easter egg on
say egg again.
Egg. There's a print of Cindy Sherman's Untitled number 136 right behind Elizabeth. And I love it because I feel like the sartorial choices in the photo are very evocative of Elizabeth's own, who again is wearing an incredible top in this scene.
You have that top.
No, I don't, but I want it.
Yeah.
That top costs 670 euros.
Okay, you have the Target version of that top.
Only a half of a matching set, so I do not have that top. Alejandro continues to make money via Craigslist, waiting in line for iPhones and teaching people to use Twitter so that they can be famous. This montage is interspersed with images of Alejandro navigating the maze and then more of his toy ideas, but we've already talked about those. Oh, actually, one of the toy ideas is another Cabbage Patch doll with the voiceover. Felicity just got a Venmo request for her California roll she had with Marjorie 2 weeks ago on a play date. A blow she didn't see coming.
I love these because these are all very clearly from personal experience.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, we've all had that, like, oh, gosh, really forgot to pay that person back and kind of was thinking you weren't going to ask sort of situation. Alejandro returns to the loft. I think he went to go get the right screws or something and finds out that Elizabeth has brought on a new foundation intern named Bingham, who is played by James Scully, who will eventually be awarded a Guggenheim Fellowship for being cute in the arts.
Which, that line right there, I think is my favorite line from the entire movie. Because, I mean, you meet Bingham and like the whole way that character is just dressed and made up and portrayed in the way, you know, Scully acts in, where he's got this confidence that seems totally unearned, but also has never been questioned ever before.
No human being has ever earned that level of confidence. But yeah, he's like the quintessential like art, like rich kid art nepo baby, where we learn his father is an important collector who forced him to take the internship after he wrecked the car. But he has skills. He gardens, and he's going to drive Elizabeth up to Maine, and he might be able to figure out File Finder Pro.
Who calls it File Finder Pro?
He calls it that. Yeah.
And he also brings up, like, why isn't this lady using Google Sheets?
Yeah.
Like it's Alejandro's fault. Like he hadn't thought of that.
Yeah.
Which is actually the first thing he said to Elizabeth. It's like, well, we just use Google Sheets.
Google Sheets, yeah.
Which brings me back to the point again. Why does she need FileMaker Pro for, fine, it's more than 13. 20 works.
I mean, I think people just get attached to the idea of a software or an idea of a tool. But Elizabeth realizes that the final egg painting they need to complete the show, called Blue, Egg on Yellow Satin, is possessed by Dahlia, a former student of Bobby's with whom he'd had an affair. To get revenge, Elizabeth wrote a scathing review of Dahlia's work about her Columbia MFA show titled Messy Unresolved Nightmarish Interiors by Dahlia Park spoiled an otherwise fantastic show at Columbia University, in a publication that looks a whole lot like The New Yorker. And Dahlia will not give the painting back to Elizabeth without an apology.
Okay, that article title. You had to freeze frame to see that, right?
Yes.
It's pretty quick on the screen.
Yes.
Messy, Unresolved Nightmarish Interiors. That seems like it could either be the title of Dahlia's Columbia show.
Interesting.
Or it could be Elizabeth calling it that.
Yeah, I assumed it was Elizabeth calling it that. However, I do like the idea of a piece called Messy, Unresolved Nightmarish Interiors. That makes me really want to see Dahlia's work.
I didn't go to Columbia or any kind of school like that, but do individual students get reviewed, or do student shows get reviewed that much?
I think they do.
Okay. I just went to
my understanding
state school.
Yeah. The Columbia show is a pretty big deal. I had a friend of a friend graduate from there, and a Real Housewife, I don't know of where, bought one of his paintings and like posted about it on Instagram. So people,
like capital R, capital H, Real Housewife.
Yes, a Real Housewife, not lowercase r, not lowercase h. So yeah, I think my understanding is that is a big deal show, and I would not be surprised if it was. I think it definitely gets reviewed, at least in like Hyperallergic and stuff like that. I think I've seen at least like highlights. I think that the idea that somebody like something like the New Yorker would post a really bad review is quite funny, and I don't think reflects reality, but it's a great title for a piece, I think.
More questions about this Real Housewife situation. This is a friend of yours, yeah?
Friend of a friend,
Friend of a friend. Did they recognize the Real Housewife? I don't know how you buy art beyond just like going to the artist at the show saying, hey, I'm interested in this one. Like, I've never worked with the gallerist. But is there someone who's like, hey, that's a Real Housewife?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if he found out because of like just social media later. Like, I know that the housewife in question had posted about the work.
Saw it on the next season of the show.
Yeah, it's in the background. We can talk about it on a future episode where we talk about all the fine art in the background of reality TV shows.
I mean, there might be, right?
There probably is.
Whichever ones are, alcohol proof.
Yeah. I would say a lot of art's alcohol proof, right? I don't know.
I mean, if you throw alcohol at it.
I mean, don't light
There's
a
lot
match.
of throwing drinks on people.
No, I know. Yeah. I mean, I guess step 1 is don't do that. Step 2, put it under glass.
There you go. Yeah.
Step 3, definitely don't let anybody with a knife near it.
Or a hook for a hand.
Yeah. Yeah, no hooked-handed individuals. They would have to stay behind the line.
I like the idea of building a reality TV like set house like you have for Big Brother or whatever, but there's the museum line around all art in the entire place because it would totally be respected.
Okay, I have a question, which is I was at the Art Institute like last week, and I noticed that only some of the work in the same gallery, but work by the same artist, only some of it is under protective glass. Only some of it is behind a line.
Just the valuable ones.
No, but like even when it's behind by like the same artist.
Yeah, it's their throwaway stuff.
Yeah,
they're like just protect this one.
But like some won't have any line. Some will not have any line to stand behind. Some will get the line.
Yeah, you're allowed to touch the ones without a line.
And then some, they'll actually build like the little like rope off on the ground. And I'm like, what's the difference between the line and the rope off? Like, and then what's the difference between the rope teed off and the one under glass? I have so many questions about it
really feels like if they want you to really not touch it, just do the one thing. Like, I don't know, do the rope around all of it if you have to.
I know. Or the tape.
Because if you have variations or different degrees of it just says you're allowed to just put your nose up against the other stuff.
Yeah, because otherwise I'm getting right up in there. I'm gonna rub my finger over it, gonna see what's real.
I want to bring like one of those museum rope things or those little metal fences they use that are like ankle height, but then just put them around a chair in a cafe and have people not know if it's the art or not.
Well, there are so many things that are not art that become art that way, like the banana duct taped to the wall piece.
Someone sat on that?
No, but like it wasn't art, and then it was art.
Oh yeah,
or the student who left the was it a pineapple or something, and then it became art. Yeah,
context.
Context matters so much. That's what we go to art school to learn. Context.
I will say that like. They really should just put... I mean, I guess in museums, people don't have... Do people touch stuff in museums a lot?
I would assume that it happens a lot. I know people run into things a lot and knock things over. Yesterday, when we were at the beach where they're nesting in a nesting endangered bird with lots of signs up that say, don't cross this.
We can't talk. I'm going to get too mad to...
There were like so many people who had crossed over onto the beach with the endangered bird and the endangered chicks to take photos. So I 100% believe that people touch shit in art galleries all the time. People cannot be trusted.
Yeah, I mean, I recently did a installation for work that was a big video wall in a athletic center, a community center where there are a bunch of kids running around, and we put up all these signs everywhere saying, hey, don't touch this. Immediately, kids are putting their nose, licking it, touching it.
They can't read.
Yeah,
like
but there's a sign.
They can't read the sign.
But their parents can. Their parents are like, yeah, go for it.
You think their parents are going to do anything about anything?
One of them actually said, if you didn't want them to touch it, why is it within reach of a child?
Yeah, same question. You got to build the environment that encourages the behavior you'd like to see.
All right, as benevolent dictator, everything is going to be only reachable if you were like 5 feet tall or higher.
Counterpoint, just make everything touchable. Who cares?
Okay, yeah, sure.
Let's just bolster the insurance industry, make everything extremely touchable.
We'll just saran wrap everything.
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, everything can be very disposable.
Like that episode of How To with John Wilson where he talks to people who just put plastic over all their furniture so it'll never be damaged. Yeah.
Yes, that is
plastic everything. That'll solve all of our problems.
Yeah, that will make the world
Saran-wrapped
better.
Mona Lisa.
Yeah. Yeah, just I mean, yeah.
It's guacamole that you're trying to keep from going brown.
Especially with put the pit next to it. Especially with all these like people throwing soup on paintings and crap. Like, yeah, let's just saran wrap it all.
That soup actually, there was like under glass, right?
There's
all the outrage.
Always under glass. Every single time it's under glass. And every single time it's the same outrage bait cycle. Same thing just happened with the Stonehenge stuff. Like they threw some like orange paint or something or red paint on it. And it's just like cornstarch based and will wash away with the rain. Like everybody freaks out though. And everybody gets so mad.
Yeah, man. Stonehenge has been here a while. I think it can
survive. Yeah. Another, at least this apocalypse. Okay, so I have a question.
Yeah.
How successful is Elizabeth as a critic if her work can have an outsized impact on the careers of people like Dahlia and Bobby? I guess if that write-up was actually in the New Yorker, then she is probably pretty successful.
It seems like she was.
Yeah.
And this got in the way. You have a little bit of that with Bobby saying, like, why did you do that? People think that I slept with you for the review.
Yeah.
Like, it seems like her downfall.
You wouldn't say that if somebody wasn't like actually successful. Yeah.
Right.
And I think that she says that review didn't earn her the nickname the Hydra or something.
Bobby calls her the Hydra, right?
Oh, Bobby also calls her the Hydra, which girl dump him. Or I guess he permanently dumped himself into a cryo chamber, so it's fine. But
what a way to get dumped.
I know.
And then also skipping ahead at the end of the movie when she freezes herself. Imagine if you froze yourself and like... It's an easy way to like not break up with someone. Well, not easy, but you don't have to have that conversation, right?
Right.
And then you wake up and they're right there next to you.
Ooh, I'm not saying that's what happened, but if it is, I am very interested in hearing the story from Bobby's side of things. Like I froze myself to resurrect my art career and dump my girlfriend, and yet
wakes up, checks his watch. How long has it been?
Oh, dang.
We were on blue egg on yellow satin, right?
Yeah.
Blue egg on yellow satin comes up quite a bit towards the end of this film. I was trying to figure out who painted this. Where did this actually come from? Mm-hmm. You might remember all the way back like 3 minutes ago when I was getting really excited about costumed eggs. Mm-hmm. Look at this image.
Oh my God. What if I told you I made that?
You made that?
No, I'm kidding. So what I'm looking at is an image of an egg, but it's got this little like satiny or like velvety headdress sort of thing on and like a little pearl that makes it look like the girl with the pearl earring. It's so good. I love this so much.
Scarlett Johansson beat this egg out for the role in that movie.
Yes.
Vermeer was quite taken with this egg.
Yeah. Is this person in this who has tweeted this, or do you know if that's the artist?
I have no idea who that is. I was trying to figure out who had painted blue egg on yellow satin. I reverse image searched it, and this is what I got back. And it is a tweet from someone, Michelle Wojciechowski. It just says, IYKYK, if you know, you know. And there's the image, and that's it.
I love it. This is beautiful. Again, if Bobby wakes up, he should pursue this line of inquiry in his work. It's gorgeous. I would also like to point out that in the image of blue egg on yellow satin, there is a little flashlight on the couch that is turned on. Which is very funny.
Wait, it's not a phone. It's just a flashlight.
It's just a regular flashlight. Also, is that the same cactus, do you think?
No, that first one was like a little round.
Yeah, well, maybe bulb. It's the cactus all growed up.
Maybe. Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah, well, Alejandro asks about the missing painting, like, have you reached out? And Elizabeth says, I screamed as much as I could. And so Elizabeth tells him they're not doing the show, and Alejandro's dreams of sponsorship are crushed. And then later, Alejandro shows up at Dahlia's house. Dahlia Park is played by Greta Lee, who I think maybe one of the best performances in the movie. She's not in it for very long at all, but I loved her in this role. She really brings a range of emotion and gives her an apology he wrote on Elizabeth's behalf, but with Elizabeth's blessing. As he's printing it out, Elizabeth is like, well, can I read it? And he's like, no, and swats her hand away.
Sits in front of the printer so she can't see it over him.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And when they're leaving, after they get the painting from Dahlia, who eventually does give it to them, she says, did you see how many children she had? All from different fathers, clearly. But Alejandro's like, no, she runs a daycare. And then Elizabeth says, Bobby, we did it. We found all your paintings, cataloged them, and synced the databases. There will be order at last. Which is it's so funny, but it's also really sweet because she's been so lost since Bobby died. And it's so clear that syncing the databases is like the only way she knows how to make sense of the world.
Yeah, you throw yourself into the one thing and then that becomes everything. And so everything else goes away.
Exactly.
Do we know how long it's been since Bobby got frozen?
We never really get much of a sense of that. No, I don't know when Alejandro shows up to the cryo chamber.
Okay, so skipping ahead a bit, Elizabeth drives up to Maine with Bingham, probably to do some gardening. Elizabeth dusts off and turns on her colorful plastic 2000s era iMac to find that the databases do not match.
There is not actually order in the universe.
Did she never check her iPad?
It's on one way on her iPad, but not on the iMac.
Are there actually any databases?
They might not be.
Well,
real.
It sounds like there are because she calls up Alejandro livid and says something to the tune of, these all are tagged as INB-INC, not UNC-INB.
And what do those mean?
I don't know.
One of them is under the bed and one of them is under the couch, I think. Like Maine caught it like in one of them means like in Maine under the couch or in Bushwick under the bed or something like that. I don't remember what the exact acronyms are.
So she's calling Alejandro and just laying into him, and he's trying to talk her down. And then when he does, she pivots immediately because she wants to be mad at him, right?
Yeah.
And says, well, my iPad still has games on it, which, not that this has ever directly happened, but this reminds me of calls that I've had with certain members of your family because I am tech support for your family.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't think they're mad at you.
They're not mad at me. No, it's just I don't know what's wrong with your iPad. I thought we were talking about something else.
I don't even know what's wrong.
We were talking about your Wi-Fi.
I don't even know what's wrong with my iPad or my Wi-Fi. I don't know why. I still don't know how to turn on our TV. It's a mess.
You got to think positive thoughts.
Yeah, I wish it were that simple. Maybe I need to get one of those implants.
Also, like with this whole scene where, like, you know, we've had these nice moments with Alejandro and Elizabeth, and then it just all gets turned on its head. You kind of realize, like, oh, wait, why is it that she can't drive herself? It's also like same reason she won't take an Uber.
Yeah, because she's been banned from the app. She's probably been banned from driving.
Same reason that all of her Apple devices are broken, because she constantly berates everyone she talks to in customer service. So Elizabeth wants her pound of flesh. And what she wants is for Alejandro to go to the computer in her loft in New York, burn a CD, which who even knows what that means anymore, of the database info, send it to her overnight so she can check to see if the information does indeed match. It's like this test that Alejandro's meant to fail. He burns the CD. He goes to ship the CD overnight to her in Maine, and in the process, overdraws on his checking account.
Because of the overdraft, Alejandro's situation is growing more dire, and one evening he discovers that Hasbro has used one of his Cabbage Patch doll ideas. He is walking down the street in the dark, trying to desperately compose an email to Hasbro, begging to talk to somebody about this, and he's kind of suddenly bathed in light. and he looks up at like kind of a rooftop or a balcony or something. And there's a person up there and he's being backlit by some kind of street light. And then the light just goes out.
Okay, what was that? Like, I remember watching that shot and I could not place what that was.
So the set design is extremely confusing. It almost looks like a person in like a cubist sort of satellite dish. I really don't know. I cannot make much of it. However, the thought I had, if you want to take a look at that image, do you recognize that painting?
Yeah, it's Guernica.
Yeah, by Pablo Picasso. Guernica is like one of my favorite paintings. I mean, one of my favorite old paintings. You know, how can you even have a favorite? It is among the favorites. And you just kind of see the light bulb up here where there's the sort of looks like the sun rays, but it's sort of an eyeball. And all of the figures in the painting are looking up at this. All the motion in the painting kind of goes up to this light bulb. And this painting was about war and about that sort of desperate plea. And you're looking up and you're praying to God, but God is just a light bulb. And that was the connection I made to this, where he's standing there, he's bathed in this light. Maybe there's some hope, and then the light goes out because the hope is it's just a light bulb.
Gonna be honest, it wasn't until right now that I noticed there was a light bulb in Guernica.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's also, it kind of looks like a sun. It kind of looks like an eye at the same time. There's a lot going on in the image. You can be forgiven for missing a few things in this painting.
I mean, the shot in the film with the person holding the lights, it takes you out of it because it seems like it's someone on the set from the film or something.
It really does.
It doesn't fit with anything else in the film.
Yeah, that's what I meant by like, it's like a cubist satellite dish. It looks like scaffolding. I mean, it even like since this movie came out, we've been watching more of Julio Torres's work, like his sort of sketch show Fantasmos, and all the sets are they're just scaffolding. They're very minimal in a certain way, in the way that like the skeleton of the sets are extremely minimal, even if like the objects and things in them are not always. And it reminds me of that for sure.
It's very like theatrical. This part of the film, you have this very kind of jarring shot to bring you out of it because it's really it's approaching the film's climax, right? Alejandro was desperate before. He is in the pit of despair now and just needs to find a way to crawl out.
I kind of have a side note, which is just when he gets home after this scene and he doesn't have any keys because he gave it to somebody named Trevor who is subletting his room. And he's just kind of scratching at the door like a kitty cat. And I think it's so cute.
And it works. He gets let in.
He does get let in.
Who knows how long he was out there?
I hope somebody left him a little bowl of food and water.
He comes in and he's clearly exhausted. He can barely even stand up. And he's been sleeping on the couch because he rented out his room to someone else so he could make some extra money because he couldn't afford the rent. And his roommate named Spray, who was played by Spike Einbinder, who, little side note, that's actually Julio Torres' real life college roommate. Spray explains to him that someone else's girlfriend is staying over here and is just holding court on the couch. It's like there's an ongoing party and Alejandro has nowhere to sleep. And so Spray tells him like, well, why don't you just go sleep in your room? He's like, no, I can't. I rented it out. Like, that guy's never here. So eventually he just goes in there, sees his room, and it's pretty trashed, but you have all these little shots. It's another one of those moments where you have these little miniature close-up tableaus of things arranged in an artistic way. And one that I really love from this shot is a still life of a 5-hour energy bottle with a cheese puff ball balanced perfectly on top.
Yeah, I want to see that sculpture in a gallery for sure. I also love just the moment where Spray's like, I've literally never seen this guy, the roommate in question, but they're rolling joints on his headshots.
There's a point of that too, right? Like this guy rents the room and doesn't need it. It's a backup plan, whereas Alejandro can't even reliably have a place to sleep.
Yeah. So the next day, Alejandro's in the middle of meeting with his immigration attorney who offers him a job and visa to be a paralegal. And so you're like, oh my God, yes. Great. But Alejandro looks kind of like nonplussed about this whole thing. And that is exactly when he receives a call from the Roosevelt Island Fine Arts Gallery. They've had a cancellation and they want to give Bobby a solo show tomorrow. Alejandro calls Elizabeth, expecting to be, enthused. And instead she says, those people show evil Mickey Mouses and glittery Marilyn Monroes. To which Alejandro says, well, that investors pay a lot of money for. I really want to believe that Elizabeth is specifically talking about cause, which you will remember, dear listener, if you listen to our Broad City episodes, that I think is like balls. And, I'm inclined to initially agree with Elizabeth's reading of this, but Ollie really does seem to understand the art market better than the seasoned critic.
If only cause were the only option for what that was.
Well, so there are there are a ton, but there are two extremely famous artists who have traded millions on the image of Mickey Mouse and Marilyn Monroe. Can you guess who they are?
One is Warhol.
Yep.
Who's the other?
The other would be Banksy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So here, you can take a look at this image here.
So that's Warhol's Quadrant Mickey Mouse?
Yeah, 4 Mickey Mouses in a quadrant. Exactly how it sounds. It looks like it's a 1, 2, maybe a 4 color print. 5 sold for $4.5 million at Christie's in 2015.
That went to pay for legal fees to the Walt Disney Corporation?
Who knows?
What is the deal with that? Like, they're extremely litigious. Is this
and
a collab?
Has it changed since we got Steamboat Willie in the public domain? I don't know. Yeah, no idea how that all works, or if there's any sort of like carve outs for art. I don't know.
Or if it's going to make them money, sure, they'll allow it.
Yeah, maybe they're fine with it. In May 2022, right under that, we see Warhol, the shot Sage Blue Marilyn Monroe, sold for over $195 million at Christie's, which is the most expensive work of art ever sold in America.
But it's not glittery.
It is not glittery. I could not find any serious examples of glittery Marilyn
Maybe
Monroes.
it was, and the glitter just kind of sloughed off over time.
Yeah, I don't think that stuff preserves well. But want to take a look at the image right under that shot Sage Blue Marilyn Monroe. So that's Banksy's take. And
it's Kate Moss.
Yeah, it's Kate Moss. It's gone for far less at auction, obviously.
Only a paltry $200,000.
Yeah, but not bad for something that is so derivative. And also, I think that this is one of many, many, many additions. So, you take that $200K, $100K here, $50K there, and you're getting quite the payday trading on this image. And on a little bit of a less nice note, if you want to scroll down just a little more.
Yeah, that's like a much more famous Banksy image.
Yeah.
It's the napalm piece where it's the child running. You can explain this better. You have the name written down here, but it's the child who's being bombed by the Americans in Vietnam.
Yeah.
Holding Mickey Mouse's hand and Ronald McDonald's hand.
Yeah. Most people are probably familiar with the Napalm Girl image that came about in the Vietnam era. The little girl's name is Phan Thi Kim Phuc, and her image was made famous because she's nude and just running down the street screaming in pain as her skin is burning. And yeah, this is a rough image to look at for sure. But yeah, it kind of shows you how folks like Banksy just continue to trade on certain commercial images. And regardless of what you think about it, that's where a lot of money in art is extremely derivative imagery. And then there's right below that an absolutely cursed image by Ron English, a contemporary American pop artist. And what do you see in these?
All right. The one on the right looks more like an image to me. It looks like the Warhol Marilyn Monroe, but it continues down past the clavicle to her breasts, but they are covered with just like the painted part of Mickey Mouse's face. So like just I don't know. Is that fur on Mickey Mouse? What's all the black stuff?
Do you think it's covered, or do you think her breasts are Mickey Mouse?
It has to be. I need it to be covered. These are just big pasties or something.
I think I was assuming that it was Mickey Mouse.
Think they talk? Do they talk?
What?
You think they talk?
Oh, I hope not. Well, I don't know. What do you think they talk about?
I don't know. The Vietnam War?
Yeah. All the places they've been, all the things they've seen.
And then on the left, there's, well, something very similar. It's just a different Mickey Mouse face on a different rendition of Marilyn Monroe.
Yeah, there's a collage going on in this image.
There's money in it.
Right behind the head of Marilyn Monroe, there's like a cow, I think, talking on the phone, and the cow has like big tits.
But only two. Like cows have like way more than two nipples, right?
Oh yeah, I mean that cow has like a human stomach. I mean the cow is also
one stomach.
Oh wait, is the cow on the phone or does the cow have a gun? I can't really tell.
I think it's a gun.
Yeah, I think it's a gun. Yeah. So anyway, I just thought that was an interesting little background on all the places Marilyn and Mickey have popped up. I mean, Marilyn and Mickey have been printing money for artists, for galleries, for museums for almost a century now.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know. I feel like I have my initial read of, like I said, I agree with the Elizabeth's assessment. That place is trash because they show evil Mickey Mouses and glittery Marilyn Monroes. But, the art world at large does not agree with me, and that is fine.
Well, there's a bit here, too, of what is the art world, right?
Yeah.
There are various different art worlds.
Yes.
On Instagram, Brad Trammell has posted a number of reels. Reels on Instagram? I'm old, help me.
It's reels.
Reels, okay. Of these galleries that will make all these videos of them unveiling new work for sale or work that's just sold. And it's like a diamond-encrusted Tweety bird or a big epoxy thing that's filled with different symbols of quick wealth with what could be considered pop art icons, but are really just like Looney Tunes and Mickey Mouses and stuff like that. And they're always talking about how much they're selling it for. Mm-hmm. So like there appears to be this whole other art market for this type of work. I don't know who's buying it. I don't know if they're any different from the people who are spending millions to buy famous works and put them in storage somewhere.
Well, that's exactly what it is. And I mean, I've seen like Mickeys and stuff in like famous private collections. Like, I can't remember the name, but I've seen this private collection in Berlin and there were some Mickeys in there. And if it's selling at Christie's and stuff like that, it's because they're going into private collections. They're probably going into storage. They're being trotted out for tax breaks for show every once in a while. But yeah, that's where a lot of these are living.
And I mean, if you go to Disneyland, there are certain gift shops that are kind of like the art collectors gift shops where they do have the very, very expensive Disney characters or sculptures or things like that.
Are they by Banksy?
I don't know. They might be.
Wrong theme park.
Probably not. Yeah. But they're expensive, right? They're sold at like not.
I don't know what
Christie's.
You're talking about.
Okay,
I've never been
Disneyland.
I mean, I think I've been, but like I've never been to the arty gift shop. I guess I didn't know this was the thing.
Yeah, they sell expensive things there that are Disney characters, but I think those ones are official.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, versus this Monroe Mickey tits, which is we can safely say is unofficial.
Monroe Mickey tits.
I guess the name is Super Pink Marilyn, but I thought Monroe Mickey tits was a better name.
These Monroe Mickey tits, they're both on English.
Yeah, they're both on English.
The first one that we talked about is from 2006. The second one's 2011. Does he do other things?
Yeah, he does.
Okay.
He does more than two work.
Every 5 years brings out Mickey tits.
Yeah, I don't know. Sure.
Right,
yeah, I think he's a pop artist. I think he definitely trades on this imagery a lot, but he also uses a lot of other different IP in his work.
Look, all I'm saying here is that maybe we should start making Mickey Mouses.
Yeah, I think that could be a good way to go. Let's make Mickey Mouse work, but for TV and film. Like, so we can get in on that action too, because that seems like a good way to make money as an artist.
Yeah, making bootleg Mickey Mouses for TV and film where lots of people will see it.
There will be no licensing
repercussions.
issues.
Yeah.
It's not like those websites for renting film for TV and film exist because of licensing issues, so we will be fine.
Well, when we get in trouble, we can just point to Warhol and say, well, he did it.
He did it.
So as part of this conversation between Alejandro and Elizabeth, when she's livid that the show that he got them was for the
Roosevelt Island Fine Arts Gallery.
As it often does with Elizabeth, it becomes an argument about much, much more. She says to him, why are you making everything so difficult? And This, if you remember, at the start of the film is also what his mom said to him at the beginning, or the narrator or someone talks about him moving to the most competitive place on earth to do something extremely, extremely niche.
Yeah.
Elizabeth says something here that really spoke to me with some of the questions I've had for myself of like, if you want to do art, maybe think about where you live, but then also what ability do I have to go live someplace where it's way more competitive and living there is a lot harder and it seems way more uncomfortable. But she says to him, you adore difficulty, not Mexico City, not Montreal, not Berlin, somewhere easy to get to, not an engineer or a software designer, not something anyone is gleefully handing out visas for. No, an aspiring maker of toys. Which, really gets to the title of the movie and the core of what it's getting at, right?
I think that with Alejandro, he had a very carefree, protected childhood. It only makes sense that he would want to try something hard, that he would want to put himself out there. He has never been told no, as far as we can tell. He's always been told his imagination can get him whatever he wants. And as a result, he goes to New York and suffers a lot of real world disappointments for the first time, just like anybody his age does. I mean, regardless of what you want to do and where you want to be, he's just got a typical coming of age tale. I can't say the same for Elizabeth, who is much older than him and who still makes things incredibly difficult for herself.
Well, the whole listing of different art cities reminds me of conversations I had with my various faculty advisors when I was leaving art school. I went to art school in California in the bustling cultural center of Santa Cruz. I remember different...
It's only 2 hours from San Francisco. It's practically Manhattan.
It's like what?
The curator woman said 3 times on the phone.
But I remember different advisors telling me, like, we at that point, you and I were talking about moving to possibly New York after that, and ultimately did not. But I remember some advisors saying, like, all right, if you want to do that, it can be a good move. They also pointed out how it can totally crush you, and it is a very small percentage of people who move there and get out of it what they move there for, right? Without any pivots, which in this case would be to become successful at art, whatever that means. I also remember speaking to another advisor about Mexico City being something we were considering too, to which her response was, oh, it's kind of provincial, which that... I've been turning that over in my head for a long time, and that feels like such a weird thing to say when someone's saying, we're thinking about moving here. It's like, first of all, you're living in Oakland, which is not Manhattan.
Teaching in Santa Cruz, which is definitely not LA.
I think I know what she was getting at, which is it is not these big, these big cultural centers, at least for the art market,
few
right?
Places that are. It's New York, it's London, it's Berlin, it's Singapore, it's a few others.
It is also Mexico City.
Yeah, Mexico City. I don't know what she was talking about, to be honest.
Anyway, the movie doesn't really seem to make a value judgment on the choice of place outside of Alejandro's character, right? He chose New York for the Hasbro thing.
Yeah, and I mean, he only had to get into the United States to apply. I guess he probably wanted to be in New York in case he got an interview or something like that, but he didn't necessarily have to go right to New York to apply online for the Hasbro internship.
Could have found a nice suburb somewhere.
Yeah, he could have gone to the coast somewhere, the southern coast.
They have Freeze Corp there?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. He could have probably found another Freeze Corp type business to work for. Lots of places in Florida to check out.
Anyway, when Elizabeth says this to him, he turns it around on her. He puts her on the same level, saying, you think you're some high society lady? You want to eat $28 salads? With what money? Aren't you tired of this? Let's go sell some paintings. And this is another point where Alejandro is asserting agency finally, because Elizabeth adores difficulty too. Bobby even asks her that at one point in a flashback, like, what are you doing with me? Why are you with me? That I am not an easy person to be with.
Yeah, he's specifically talking about his affairs and things like that. But, they both aren't easy people to be with together. So there's just something, I mean, yeah, their relationship does seem very tender and loving from what we can see, despite Elizabeth's temper, despite Bobby's philandering. It does seem like there is real love there.
Yeah, this movie speaks to me because it's an ode to people who really want things, right? It makes this point several times throughout the film. It's people who deeply give a shit. It's so easy to get caught up in how easy it looks for other people who seem to already have everything that you want.
Yeah, definitely.
In an interview, Julio Torres said he's very interested in humanizing people with difficult lives by showing that they also get to be stubborn in their art. Mm-hmm. You know, that being stubborn is not something that is exclusively for people with a wealth of options. I mean, you know, I don't have myself the same immigrant background that Julio Torres does, but like I think about those kinds of things quite a bit, right? You know, it's easy to get caught up in, well, bluntly in being jealous, right? On the one hand, I want my Instagram to only be art stuff. On the other hand, on days when I feel like I'm not doing enough for myself in terms of art or not going for things, it sucks to be on there. And as happy as you are for other people, it still doesn't feel good to see people getting things that you want. And so, yeah, this movie gets me thinking about what is it you actually want and what is it that you want to struggle for?
Yeah, I think that's well put. And I think that this movie does a good job of highlighting all the little things that take our attention on our way to getting the thing we're actually working for. So many of us have had jobs exactly like this of this is the thing that I'm doing until I get to the thing I want. And it's nice to see Alejandro not get sidetracked. And I mean, we don't know if he ever has to follow up about the paralegal job. Maybe flash forward, he winds up getting the internship at Hasbro, so he doesn't have to take the paralegal job. But maybe what we don't see is that he does have to take it before he's able to eventually turn it down.
But internships also don't always pan out, right?
No.
And even speaking from personal experience, you can be really focused on getting an internship and then get there and realize, wait, why did I want this?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's like any job, though. You so frequently are like, oops, wanted the wrong thing.
Yeah. And then, you know, you find the job that pays okay and start a podcast that you do on weekends and nights.
Yeah. What's wrong with that? So the next day, they take an air tram to the gallery on Roosevelt Island. I've never been to Roosevelt Island. I don't think that this gallery exists because, well, once they get there, it is very clearly like the lobby of an office building that they're in and not an actual gallery. Funny conversation I just enjoyed between him and Elizabeth on the tram was he asked, where's Bingham? And then Elizabeth says, well, I have it on good authority. He's been working the docks. And I really love that, like, this is a similar thing she said about her old assistant Celeste, that she knew she was working the alleys because she would always come in with dirty shoes. But I love that you can tell that she doesn't even believe her own bullshit here. She's kind of just having fun with it.
Yeah, that's that part where after being absent for like 40 minutes of the movie, the narrator pops back in just to say he was not working the docks. He recently won a Guggenheim Fellowship to continue pursuing being cute in the arts.
The arts, yes. So good for Bingham. Again, sucks to see somebody get something you really wanted. Maybe I'll have better luck next year.
Can we talk about that line a little bit more? Because there are so many times I've seen grants given out, and I know that like 99% of the time, the projects are definitely worthy of them. At least I have no way of knowing that they're not.
99% of the time is being so generous.
I'm trying to be generous. I'm not trying to talk shit here. I don't know. Like, we're speaking very general, but you read descriptions and you can't tell what the art is.
Yeah.
And like to further pursue being cute in the arts, it just limps that very well.
At least it has a clear purpose.
Yeah, it's not like investigating
the economics of environmental intimacy.
The poetics
of
the economics.
Of the interstitial.
Environments of intimacy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Great. We have a show. We're going to put out an open call.
Or one day when we have more listeners than just like 4 friends and my mom, someone's going to hear that. Be like, that's my project.
I invented that.
Or tomorrow we're going to like look up like, oh yeah, IBM already funded that like 2 years ago.
We can, that's at LACMA right now. Great.
Yep, that's when I just hold the flag that says, yep, I'm an asshole.
Yeah.
Let's move on.
So when they arrive at the gallery, they are disappointed to learn that they've only been given one wall, which will not fit all of the eggs. Elizabeth starts to rage, but then Alejandro seems to have developed this like Elizabeth whisperer ability where he just has to kind of like look at her and like pet her face and shush her like a horse. And then she calms down. And so she cuts a deal with the gallery. They will take all of Bobby's paintings and they can promote them however they want, but they won't compromise the vision of the show. And they call it a win. They return to the loft to celebrate. But yeah, I just think that building looked like the lobby of a building that contains a WeWork. Like the building isn't entirely a WeWork, but there's a WeWork inside of it.
I think Roosevelt Island has a WeWork.
I don't know. I don't
know what happens there.
I don't know. We must investigate. our 7-part series of what goes on Roosevelt Island.
We're just going to go there and just walk around with a microphone saying, hey, you, what are you doing?
What are you doing here? Why are you here? I do like when Elizabeth says, I thought this was a solo show. And the curator says, yeah, it's just you solo on this wall. Reminds me a lot of stretching and padding of the truth that I have seen on a lot of CVs.
My CV.
I have, yeah, probably my CV. I've definitely seen the I know that was a 2-person show, not a solo show. I know that was a group show kind of situation.
Yeah, but I had a whole wall to myself.
Yeah, so it's solo. It's just me. Solo.
My work was outside in the lobby alone. The rest of it was in the actual gallery.
Yeah, exactly. So Alejandro calls his mom to inform her of their success, and this is an interesting conversation. So the entire time this movie has been going on, Alejandro's mom, Dolores, has been in the background working on this monument proposal, since she's an artist and she's feeling creatively stuck. The mom being in the movie is something that didn't quite gel for me. I think the movie just didn't know what to do with her character and her storyline, and I think it had trouble weaving it in. That's kind of my one about this film, my one kind of ding on it. But it is a very sweet conversation, and I will say I do like how much the movie actually does include her, in spite of I think it not quite gelling. I like that she is a prominent character. But yeah, I think there's another one of those really beautiful, kind of still life scenes where she puts this yellow cloth over a bird cage as she's talking about how she's been stifled creatively. She's worried. It kind of seems like the bird is a metaphor for Alejandro.
Well, yeah, at the beginning, the narrator says that Alejandro was his mother's project, and now he's gone.
Yeah.
Making his own project. She can't protect him anymore.
Yeah. But during this conversation, he is interrupted by a voice message from Elizabeth, and she has decided to freeze herself and rejoin Bobby in the future, right now, it's happening. So Alejandro races back to the loft where Freeze Corp workers are already removing Elizabeth's inert frozen corpse via the cryo chamber. Alejandro's dreams of sponsorship have been crushed in spite of Elizabeth writing a glowing recommendation letter to the president about Alejandro.
A few questions here.
Uh-huh.
The money from the show is ostensibly going to go to keep Bobby's archival services at Freeze Corp going.
Yep.
How is she paying for her own freeze?
The loft, the house in Maine.
Oh, okay.
She's gonna all of her assets. In the message to him at the end, she talks about how she's set things up with lawyers and accountants to take care of the estate to keep her and Bobby frozen. Also, just want to point out in this final scene where she's talking on the phone to him, flashlight check. She's on the phone and the flashlight's on.
There's actually, it shows her recording the voice memo, finishing it up. And, she kind of wraps up her message. And then as she's putting her phone down, looks at the back. And for the first time in the whole movie, notices the flashlight is on and just kind of shrugs and leaves it on because she's going to be frozen. What does she care?
Exactly. Maybe that's why it's been it's clear she didn't just make this decision. It seems sudden in the movie, but, she's explaining that she's been so lost without Bobby and wants to rejoin him in the future. And I think she explains to Alejandro she needed him and she needed the show to get everything in place for her to do this.
Right. She also in that message lists a bunch of things that she wants Alejandro to do while she's frozen forever, which gets back at this theme throughout the movie of, all these kind of unseen workers, cultural or otherwise. One of the last things she says to him are, and see that the database is sorted. Because that'll definitely matter when she wakes up once they figure out how to wake people up from this.
Wait, isn't her very last line to him and I really, really, really can't believe that with all that time on your hands, you didn't get the databases sorted? Or something like that.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah. But she's not just asking for things of Alejandro. She does let him know that after an entire day of negotiating, she did find the name of the person he needs to talk to at Hasbro.
Negotiating the phone tree.
The phone tree, yes.
Which expert phone tree lady.
From watching this movie a couple of times while we're working on this, the way Elizabeth navigates a phone tree has started to permeate my own mental pathways when I'm talking to a phone tree, which is at least every other day, unfortunately.
Human.
It's yelling human, asking for a human, and then saying no, none of those options to the voice recognition.
I 100% did that this week. Yeah, I just started, nope, customer service. None
of those options.
Agent. Yeah.
Which you can just take that out of context. You hear someone on the phone, you don't even know that someone's on a phone if you hear them doing that, but just yelling human. I mean, that feels like an art piece unto itself, just yelling into the void, which might have some poor underpaid person all the way across the world answering your cries for human, help me, serve me.
Human.
There's even a point in this film where Elizabeth is yelling, serve me, at someone who is telling her, I can't do that, it's impossible.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I feel like this movie does a great job of humanizing Elizabeth. It is important to remember she is a bad person.
She's a nightmare.
She's a total nightmare, especially the way she treats the waiter at the cafe, where she says, after berating him and things, orders her food and then says, and an iced tea, please. And then as soon as he walks away, she says to Alejandro, oh, they love it when you say please. It's like a little morsel for them. She's such a bad person. I cannot stress that enough.
Yeah, Alejandro is
I would not spend more than 20 seconds in her vicinity before I noped out of there.
I think that's kind of the point of her character.
Yeah.
Like, Alejandro's not there. He doesn't get to the point where he understands her because he wants to be around her.
No.
He doesn't have other options.
Yeah, exactly.
He's going to probably have nightmares about her for a while.
Yes, definitely. But emboldened by some of Elizabeth's parting words of wisdom and the name of the executive, Brian, who stole his Cabbage Patch idea, Alejandro goes to Hasbro and confronts this executive. I think it's actually pretty obvious they used the same set for Hasbro as they did for the gallery.
Maybe it was in the same.
Yeah.
There's a WeWork, there's the gallery, and there's Hasbro on Roosevelt Island.
And yeah, his little march walk up to Brian is so cute. He tells him, hello, we have been corresponding quite a little bit, and tells him that he thinks he stole his idea.
Brian has no idea who he is, and Alejandro's not the kind of person Brian would ever see, actually see.
No.
Sorry, I'm looking up where Hasbro worldwide headquarters are right now. They have some job openings. They have one job opening.
Talent incubator?
And I can't figure out where this is. This is stupid. I was going to say, why does everything in New England sound like a place in England? Anyway, okay, yeah. I don't know where Roosevelt Island is. I don't know if Hasbro's there. We can move on.
But they are hiring, and I think Danny McDonald should apply. His toy ideas. So he secures a job with the Talent Incubator program by blackmailing Brian, along with the sponsorship. Now that he's got his sponsorship and stuff back in El Salvador, Ollie's mom, finally free of worrying about his bullshit, has a creative breakthrough. And
ask my mom if her art improved after I moved away.
Yeah.
And at what point after I moved away did it?
Well, yeah, I feel like all moms probably find that their art practice probably takes on a different, at least tenor, post children flying the nest. I think what I was saying earlier about Dolores is, I think I actually just want an entire movie about Dolores being distracted by her dumb son, like a sequel. Struggling artist who's like, what is he doing over there? He spending $200 mailing CDs to some artist lady. My God, I have so many problems here. I can't handle it. But she has this breakthrough, and she's going to create this monument to the artist, which is a series of puzzle pieces scattered throughout town, like Ollie's fort, but disassembled. Some will see stairs or benches, some will see a challenge, and will learn that the puzzle has no instructions. It'll look different for everyone, and just when they think they're done, another piece appears. It's a monument to doing what scares you and assembling yourself in the chaos. And as the narrator is kind of describing this monument, we see the sculptures placed in different locations from the film. I love this idea. I want this to be a real thing.
We're both suckers for monuments.
Yeah, I think it's a lovely idea for a public art project. Yeah, it's really nice.
Yeah.
I think when we're initially introduced to the idea of she's working on a monument project, there you immediately get an idea of it's some statue of a person, and it signifies something historical. There are some really interesting movements around monuments now. Like Monument Lab does interesting things about reimagining what monuments can be. And I think that this sort of thing would fit in really well with those different takes on monuments that we're seeing these days.
This part definitely feels like the end of the film, but we get a little bit of an epilogue here where we cut to 322 years in the future. We see Elizabeth and Bobby have been woken up by Freeze Corp. Again, really wondering if Bobby was expecting to see her there or not.
Yeah, imagine you go to sleep and you're like, oh shit, you're here. Oh, damn.
I hadn't really thought this part through.
Yeah, oof. All right. I've been putting this conversation off for 322 years. And yeah, they've clearly not been woken up for that long and they're already kind of at each other. But they also have that really lived in married couple vibe. So this scene also features my favorite character in the movie, Bebo, who is a little tiny robot carrying around a flag.
Wearing a little baseball cap, jaunty angled
and
baseball
got,
cap.
Like a tummy full of cocktails, like ready to serve them. It's so cute.
But Bebo comes to their room, and first of all, the set here, it looks like a cheap business hotel, or the note I wrote is nice to see they preserve the cruise ship aesthetic 322 years in the future.
But it also looks like a cheap business hotel where a bunch of MFA students have been told you can build an art installation here.
That's probably been done.
Yeah, that's cool.
I want to see it. Regardless, it should happen again.
Yeah, I wonder if we can...
Let's rent out the DoubleTree.
Let's figure this out. Yeah, I want to do that.
When I saw Bebo, because it's got all the browns and beiges of the space, I remember this one time I was actually at a cheap business hotel in San Jose, and I had left... I had left something to talk about. Yeah. I had left
forgot about this.
I was there for one night for a video shoot, and I left my bag with the front desk because I came in... I want to leave my luggage, and I had to get straight to the set. I came back in the early evening, and I went to my room exhausted, and I called down to the front desk saying, hey, can I get my bag from y'all? Oh, yeah, no problem. We'll bring it up to you. And 10 minutes later, I got a call saying, answer the door, and I opened the door, and a little tapered cylindrical robot with a little face and a little tie printed on the front of him is just there, and I'm standing there in my underwear, looking at this robot, and realizing I need to push on the top of his head so his head opens up, and my bag was stuffed inside it. This thing rode the elevator on its own.
Did you know that you were meeting a celebrity?
No, I didn't know Bebo then.
Yeah. Did you tip him?
Was I supposed to?
Yes.
Who would get the tip?
Bebo.
Bebo?
Bebo's got bills to pay.
Where would it even go? They just put it in the cavity that
you just drop it in the...
I'm just thinking, I pulled my luggage out of this anthropomorphized machine's body cavity.
Yeah, you pulled it out of its torso.
His brains.
Yeah, I think you should tip for that.
Yeah, it was really unnerving. I was in my underwear. I was like, is there a camera on this thing?
It's $3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, it really was the high point of staying at the Sheridan or whatever the worst one of the Marriotts is by the San Jose airport. Bebo doesn't seem like he could fit a whole duffel bag inside him.
Have you tried?
No. Where would the cocktails go?
That's exclusively for Bebo's OnlyFans.
Bebo's clearly been working out since his stint at the Sheridan.
Yeah.
Bebo's a lot smaller.
Oh.
And less cylindrical.
Yeah. Maybe that was Bebo's dad.
Bebo's dad who had to work at the crappy business hotel so that Bebo could move to New York 322 years in the future and serve cocktails on the Freeze Corp cruise ship or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've met a Bebo before.
Yeah, I know. I love it.
I should have asked him, do you know Bebo?
Do you know Bebo? Just because we look alike doesn't mean we all know each other.
I'm saying him. I know that I'm gendering the robot. The robot was wearing a tie.
Well,
I know that women can wear ties. I know that people of any gender can wear ties.
Wouldn't it be Biba?
Not necessarily, Chris.
Bibe.
Bebe.
Bebe.
Start calling all robots Bebe. I'll see a security robot just walking,
bebe.
going down the street by the mall, hey, Bebe.
Yeah, there we go. So Bobby and Elizabeth have to go to this mixer for all the recently awoken Freeze Corp patients? Corpses? Former corpses?
Freeze corpses.
For all the former Freeze corpses.
Congratulations, we figured out how to unkill you.
And Elizabeth tries to go get some wine, immediately starts yelling at some poor little bartender about not serving her wine. And this bartender looks so much like a little Alejandro, like in the mannerisms, you know. He's like, oh, sorry, ma'am. You can join the mixer, and then after the speeches, you can get your wine. And he's just trying to deal with her as she's marching back into the kitchen. And we cut to the shot of this old man, and you start hearing these little whispers where people say, oh, that's Alejandro. He's that famous toy maker along with his mother Dolores. And I just thought it was so incredibly great that his mom was recognized as a collaborator. I don't know what happened with his career after like the Hasbro talent incubator, but it's so great to me that somebody would say like, there's that famous person and the famous person who was supporting them and developing talent with them along the way. I feel like that is very rare in the art world for collaborations to be fully recognized that way.
Yeah, for sure. And that's something that you see like in the Julio verse, right? I mean, his college roommate, who's also a performer, is in this film, is in a lot of his other stuff in Phantasma. They're the nurse in that one episode.
Oh, yeah.
Another note that I have from the mixer scene is it's Bobby and Elizabeth having awkward cruise ship mixer conversation with someone at their table. And Bobby asks, well, what do you do? And this woman says, I'm a poet. And because of this whole thing, I'm in a substantial amount of debt, which makes you think, what awaits them?
Yeah.
You go into more debt in this thing, and then you wake up at a time when poets and painters will be adequately compensated for their talent.
Oh, joke's on them. If they're not, I'm just going to kill myself.
Just freeze me back up.
Yeah. Just put me back to sleep. I didn't ask to be woken up quite yet.
But there is something interesting here, right? Is what actually awaits them most likely is a company that needs to recoup the cost of figuring out how to reanimate them, right?
Yep. They're going to wake up to changed contract terms, which Elizabeth was dealing with when Bobby was asleep.
Right. But it's also the expectation that it might be this utopia where artists are appreciated and appropriately paid for their work is so optimistic.
Yes.
And so absurd.
So absurd, yeah.
In a world where Freeze Corp, which caters exclusively to artists, exists.
Yes. So I was kind of wondering, we see Alejandro as an old man. The narrator tells us he lived a long, happy life. It seems like he had a great career, which begs the question, why did he choose to be frozen?
He missed Elizabeth.
Did he just choose to be frozen so he could tell Elizabeth that he did sync the databases?
That he learned FileMaker Pro.
Because otherwise I'm like, why you wake up after a nice long life like that? But yeah.
Yeah, we don't see what happens next. Elizabeth just says, really? Order reigning supreme at last?
Yes.
And it cuts. But maybe Alejandro's like, all right, I'm done. I'm going to go back in the freezer.
Yeah, maybe he's like, that was my unfinished business. Now I don't have to be a ghost.
How we can cross over.
Yeah. He was just afraid of having to walk ceaselessly on the mortal coil without rest. So, well, that's the end of Problemista. I think there's two questions here. There's one of like overall opinion of the movie. I think there's also the question of how well this media represented art and the art world.
I think in the spirit of this film, we should make this as complicated and difficult for ourselves as we possibly can.
That's smart. We should get a spreadsheet going and we should weight each of the scores by our own experience with each part of the art world that gets discussed. I think that's a good idea. A lot we can do here.
Yeah, and I hope you're all looking forward to our annual report next year.
Yeah. It'll be in a PDF format, non-searchable, no table of contents.
How did you feel that this represented your experience of contemporary art and the art world?
Yeah, so it will have to be my experience because I only have my experience and the things I've heard from people I know about how things work. I felt that this movie did a pretty decent job of representing the art world. I think that this movie did a good job of demonstrating how class works in the art world.
Yeah, I mean, this movie has Bingham as a character to provide contrast, not just to make fun of him, but to provide contrast, which is not something...
Elizabeth, who is probably a Rockefeller.
Who has managed to blow a lot of that money.
Yeah.
Probably on all the iPhones she's burnt out the batteries on.
Again, she is a third cousin at best that nobody invites to Thanksgiving.
I feel like, this movie, my scale for this is, from watching the movie, do I get the sense that the people who made it have been to a museum, been to galleries, and appreciated art beyond, oh, let's go see an art,
Yeah.
And to that, the answer is a resounding yes.
Yes. I feel like the way that art gets represented in the galleries is a nice touch. I feel like, it was an actual show when they visited Celeste's gallery that she was working at. I enjoyed that there was actual work by New York-based artists in that show. And then I felt that Bobby's story was slightly unrealistic just because of he's an instructor at Columbia, but he seems extremely Pollyanna-ish about his own work in a way that I don't know is necessarily realistic for somebody who is in the New York art world.
I mean, Columbia probably has a higher bar, but to become an art professor, you get an MFA.
Well, and then adjunct maybe.
Yeah.
We don't know what his job was. He could have been an adjunct
and be called professor. Yeah.
Well,
my LinkedIn will forever say assistant professor because of that.
Yeah, it depends
one
on
class
the school. I wouldn't, as a student, I would never call an adjunct a professor.
Well, your professors really didn't appreciate that.
Well, they weren't real professors, so there you go.
These opinions are Chris's alone and not mine.
Well, I'm not padding my CV, am I? So
Jesus.
We're in a fight. I did just feel like he didn't really fully understand making marketable work and things like that. It didn't really seem to gel. He seemed almost like a high school student or a college student, and like what they think of as art and like creating a body of work.
Yeah, but is that a requisite for teaching at Columbia?
Okay, let me put it this way. I could see somebody who is creative and enjoys painting and stuff doing this kind of work and dreaming that like, oh, I'll get this into galleries and stuff. But without the touchstone of the bigger art world and the New York art world, they would not be able to see that that isn't going to happen for them because there's no audience for their work and there's no interest in their work. And I feel like with Bobby being a New York City artist, living in a commune, being seemingly very integrated into that world, it seems like he would have figured something out by now about what about the work isn't resounding with people and start pivoting. I just think his approach to his work is juvenile and doesn't suggest he's gone through a lot of periods of refining the content and stuff. Because again, eggs are fine as subject matter, as we discussed. Like it is an important symbol and it is well trod ground in art, but like the way he is approaching it isn't working and he doesn't seem to recognize that. He just thinks he needs more time and then people will appreciate his work.
Rather than recognize that and refine it and figure something else out and, grow, he freezes himself.
Yeah. And
that's the point, right?
Yeah. And that's why I do say, like, I enjoyed that last one, that final piece of his that is more abstract, unresolved, and things like that. For a lot of the same reasons that Alejandro critiqued it. It does feel more hopeful. It feels more energetic. There's more personality and yearning behind that piece than there is in any of the other pieces of egg.
Yeah. I think that a big reason we wanted to do this podcast was the entry point a lot of people have into contemporary art is through popular media, and it tends to do a pretty poor job of representing it, right? This film, to me, it does a really good job. Like, it is clearly by people who want to make for the sake of making. They're not really doing it for commercial reasons, though, Julio Torres is commercially successful, but the art really stays in it, right? It seems very informed without being snooty about it or anything. It doesn't require you to know anything about contemporary art or art history to engage with it, but it still does feel artful. Yeah, I really enjoyed this film. Yeah, it was like one of my favorites this year so far. That's a glowing review. I mean, The bar is pretty low, though. There have been other pieces of media we tried to engage with for this show that I've said, I can't get through this. I can't do this. I don't want to do this one. Let's do something else. So yeah, we went with something that we both liked. And
it's much nicer to like things than it is to not like things.
But stay tuned for future episodes where we talk about stuff that we absolutely hated.
It's going to be a biggie.
All right. Well, that's a wrap on Problemista.
Thanks for listening. Our music is by Layers and Layers. You can check them out on Instagram and on Bandcamp. We'll put them in our links.
And you can support us on Patreon at patreon.com/untitledartpod.
We also have a website at untitledpod.art.
Thanks so much. Bye.
Bye.